3 pit stop horror stories that will make you never stop again. Welcome to DTC, the place of the brave, where we delve into the eerie and unsettling corners of the unknown. In today's chilling episode, we explore 3 terrifying true pit stop horror stories that will make you think twice before stopping at that isolated gas station. These real-life encounters involve unsettling experiences, spine-chilling events, and the kind of horrors that lurk just beyond the headlights. From bizarre strangers to sinister forces, each story is a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things happen when you least expect them. Brace yourself, these tales will haunt you long after the screen fades to black. Story 1. The Gas Station Stalker. I never thought a single night could change my life forever. It all started on a regular night after a grueling shift at the emergency room. By the time I finished at 4 a.m., I was exhausted, my mind and body drained. I just wanted to get home and sleep, but I had no idea that the night was about to take a dark turn. After work, I stopped by a bagel shop that was still open at this hour and grabbed a chicken sandwich and a salad, my usual post-shift meal, since there's little open at that time of night. My neighborhood is pretty quiet, and the few places that are open are nearly deserted. The Shell gas station I stopped at was no exception. It was always empty at this time. I went inside to pay in cash, keeping things low-key, then stepped outside to fill my tank. The night was still, the only sound being the quiet hum of the gas station and the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. I didn't think much of the car parked at the next pump until the man got out. He was tall, with an unremarkable face, but there was something off about him, something I couldn't quite place. As I was fueling my car, I noticed him walking past me. His eyes flicked over, and then he said, "Want to see something fun?" The way he said it sent a chill up my spine, but I somehow found myself responding, "What do you mean?" He gave me a sly grin and started doing some sort of finger trick, bending his fingers back in a way that seemed childish but also unnerving. He would glance at me with a smirk, almost as if he were daring me to react. My stomach tightened, and though I tried to pretend I wasn't bothered, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Every second felt like an eternity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, really watching me. Finally, I heard the click of the gas nozzle signaling that my tank was full. I pulled the nozzle out as quickly as I could and rushed back into the store to get my change. When I came out again, the man was gone. I glanced at his car, it was still there, but he was nowhere to be seen. Odd. A sense of relief washed over me for a brief moment as I locked my car and started heading home, but that uneasy feeling didn't leave. It followed me all the way back to my parents' house. When I arrived, it was around 4:30 a.m. I was eager to eat my breakfast and get some sleep. I quietly grabbed the spare key from its hiding spot and let myself in, locking the door behind me. I didn't want to wake my parents. As I sat down to eat, I suddenly heard the front door creak open. My heart stopped. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. The sound was unmistakable, the door opening and closing, followed by a strange, unsettling silence. "Mom? Dad?" I called out softly, but there was no answer. I strained my ears, hoping for a response, but there was only silence. I stood up, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread crawl up my spine. Slowly, I made my way upstairs to my parents' room. My hand gripped the doorknob as I pushed the door open, hard. The sight that greeted me was horrifying. Both of my parents were wide awake, staring at me with confusion and alarm. "What's wrong?" my mom asked, concern in her voice. "Someone's in the house," I gasped, panic flooding my chest. Without hesitation, my dad ran downstairs, flipping on every light and shouting to check all the rooms. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. That's when I noticed something horrifying. The spare key to the front door was missing. I couldn't breathe. He had been in here. My dad checked every room in the house. As he moved through the house, I followed behind, my heart pounding. Then something made me stop. My eyes darted around the kitchen, and I felt the need to check a spot my dad may have missed. It wasn't a logical thought, but I crouched down and peered under the dining table. There he was. The same man from the gas station crouched beneath the table, staring up at me with eyes wide open. The realization hit me like a freight train. I screamed. My mom screamed too. My dad heard us and rushed upstairs, barreling through the living room with a look of pure fury on his face. The man scrambled to his feet, but he was too slow. We lunged at him, both my mom and I attacking him in a panic-fueled rage. He fought back, but we were relentless. After a brutal struggle, the man managed to break free and sprint out of the house, but the terror didn't leave with him. My dad called the police immediately. They arrived quickly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The man had been inside our home. He had a key. He could return at any time. The police assured us they'd patrol the area, but that didn't ease the feeling that gnawed at me. The man had been so close. Too close. For the next few days, we kept all the lights on, the doors locked tight, and the windows shut. But I knew. I felt it. He was still out there, watching, waiting. There was something about the way he left so easily, as if he knew he'd be back. Then the phone rang. It was late, around 2 a.m. My mom answered it, but I could hear her voice shaking on the other end, her face drained of color. She handed the phone to me. It was the police. They had found his car, but no sign of him. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. They found the spare key under his seat. Our spare key. The police didn't catch him. They were still looking. But I knew the truth. The man had never left. He never had any intention of leaving. That night, after he vanished from the gas station, he was already planning his next move, and he had made sure we wouldn't be able to stop him. As I sit here writing this, I can hear faint sounds in the house, the creaking of the floorboards, the low hum of the lights. But there's something more, an unsettling presence. It's like he's waiting, watching, knowing that no matter how many locks I put on the door, no matter how many times I check the windows, he's still out there, and I don't think he's ever really gone. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 2. The Stranger at Wendy's. I've always preferred driving at night. There's something calming about the solitude, the lack of traffic, and the quiet hum of the engine that lulls me into a state of peace. I live in Long Island, New York, and I often drive down to Florida to visit my brother. I could fly, sure, but I like the freedom of driving. I'll be there for a month, and I don't want to be reliant on anyone else to get around once I'm there. It's just easier this way. One Thursday morning at 2 a.m., I began my drive from New York. The roads were almost empty, with just a handful of headlights illuminating the dark stretches of highway. It was peaceful, but there was an eerie calm that hung in the air. By around 4 a.m., the hunger pang started gnawing at me. I decided to pull into a Wendy's to grab a quick breakfast. It was the only place I could find open, and I thought it would give me a much-needed break before continuing my journey. When I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed something odd. There was only one car in the lot, and the streetlights were all out. The Wendy's didn't open until 6 a.m., but I wasn't bothered by that at first. It wasn't unusual to find places closed in the early hours. However, just as I was about to get back into my car and leave, a man approached the window. He looked out of place, his disheveled clothes and tired eyes giving him a strange air of desperation. "Hey, my car broke down," he said, his voice shaky but polite. "Can you help me push it? I just need a little jump start." I felt a flicker of unease but brushed it off. I'm a decent person, and I didn't want to leave someone stranded in the middle of nowhere, especially at this hour. But something about him, something in his voice or the way he moved, made my skin crawl just a little. Still, I told myself it was fine and agreed to help him out. I hooked up the jumper cables to his car, but when I tried to start it, nothing happened. We tried again, but this time I noticed something strange. As he went to make a phone call, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was the kind of feeling that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I looked around the dark parking lot and saw nothing, just the dim glow of the Wendy's sign above, the only source of light. Then the unmistakable sound of engines revving broke the silence. 2 large trucks pulled into the lot, their headlights blinding in the darkness. I couldn't make out the drivers, but I felt something shift in the air. My instincts screamed at me that I needed to leave, now. But before I could react, the man who had asked for my help came back, walking toward the trucks. I had no idea what to do. I was trapped in this empty parking lot with 2 massive trucks blocking my way out, and this man who I now knew wasn't as innocent as he seemed. I couldn't waste any more time. I yanked the jumper cables off the car, threw them into my trunk, and jumped into my own car. But before I could start the engine, I saw them, 2 figures emerging from the shadows, moving quickly toward me. My pulse skyrocketed. I slammed the keys into the ignition, praying the engine would start. It didn't. I looked around in panic. The trucks were now parked on either side of my car, effectively trapping me in. The man's face, that look of desperation, now replaced with something darker, something unsettling, made my heart race even faster. It was as if I were caught in some sort of twisted game. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. My car wouldn't start, and the figures were closing in. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. Without thinking, I jumped out of my car and bolted for the tree line. I heard footsteps behind me, the sound of heavy boots pounding against the pavement. Someone was following me, and I wasn't going to stop until I put as much distance between us as possible. The woods surrounding the Wendy's were thick with dark shadows, and I ran blindly through them, not daring to look back. My breath came in ragged gasps as I pushed through branches and underbrush, my heart thundering in my chest. Every now and then I'd hear the crunch of footsteps, always just a little too close. I had no idea where I was running, only that I had to keep moving. Minutes, or was it hours, passed before I could finally bring myself to stop and listen. The sounds of pursuit faded, but the feeling that something was watching me never left. I couldn't shake the sensation that I wasn't alone in the dark, that something else was out there with me. Eventually, I found the courage to turn back and make my way back to the parking lot, but when I got there, I was met with something I couldn't believe. My car was a mess. The window was shattered and everything inside was gone. Every single thing I'd left in the car, my bags, my wallet, my clothes, everything was taken. The only thing left behind was the shattered glass and the eerie emptiness of the parking lot. I stood there for a long moment, processing what had just happened. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, I was already beginning to feel a strange sense of hopelessness settle in. They found the broken window, the missing items, and the car with the fake plates. But beyond that, they couldn't do anything. The trucks were gone, the man was nowhere to be found, and there was nothing to link them to any real crime. The police told me there wasn't much they could do with the fake license plates, and I was left to deal with the fallout. But something lingered in me long after the police left. I kept thinking about that man, those trucks, the figures lurking in the shadows. Something about it didn't feel right. Maybe it was the way the man spoke, or how the whole situation seemed orchestrated, like they knew exactly how to trap me. And those fake plates, they made me wonder, was this just a scam, or was there something far darker at play? I can't explain it, but I felt as though I'd crossed into something otherworldly, something beyond the realms of normal. It felt like they weren't just criminals, they were something else, something unnatural. I'll never drive through that Wendy's again. In fact, I've avoided that road entirely. I don't know what happened that night, and I don't want to know. I just know one thing. I wasn't alone. Not in that parking lot, not in the woods, and definitely not in the shadow of those trucks. I can still hear their engines in my mind, the way they roared to life in the dead of night, the way the headlights pierced the darkness like a warning. They were there for a reason, and I was just another victim of whatever twisted game they were playing. So, if you're ever on the road late at night, remember this. Not all strangers are just people looking for help. Some are waiting. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 3. The Rest Stop Nightmare. I've always hated long road trips, but sometimes there's no avoiding them. A 15-hour drive on the open road, especially at night, can feel like an eternity. The endless highway, the hum of the tires on the asphalt, and the occasional flicker of distant headlights. But what truly haunts me is what happened during a simple stop at a rest area on the side of the road, something that still sends chills down my spine whenever I think about it. It was late at night, the kind of night where the world seems too quiet, almost unnaturally still. I was driving along the East Coast, having already been on the road for hours. I'd passed countless rest areas, but something told me to stop at this particular one. I pulled off the highway and into the small, isolated parking lot. There were only a few cars scattered around, most of them empty, abandoned in the way that rest stop parking lots often are in the dead of night. The building was old, a typical run-down restroom facility you'd expect to see at an old truck stop. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast an eerie, sickly glow over everything. A cool breeze swept through the air, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and something else, something off. But at that point, I was tired, and the thought of a quick break was all I needed to convince myself that it would be fine. I locked my car, pulled my jacket tighter around me, and walked toward the restroom. The building was quieter than I expected. No one was inside. No one was waiting. I stepped inside the dimly lit hallway, my footsteps echoing as I walked toward the bathrooms, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing in front of one of the bathroom stalls, his back to the wall, facing into the corner. At first, I thought he was using the restroom, but something about his posture didn't sit right with me. He stood unnaturally still, like he wasn't even breathing. His hands were buried deep in his pockets, his body rigid, almost like a statue. His clothes were ordinary, nothing special, but his presence, his stillness, was something I couldn't shake. For a moment, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe he was just tired too. After all, we were all just travelers passing through. But the longer I looked at him, the more uneasy I became. I could feel my heart rate picking up, a strange sense of unease creeping into my chest. But I didn't want to be rude or paranoid, so I ignored him and stepped into a bathroom stall, hoping that I could shake off the strange feeling. I hurried through what I had to do, all the while feeling like something wasn't right. My mind kept returning to the man standing in the corner. I could still picture his motionless figure, how his head didn't move, how his body never swayed. Even though I couldn't see his face, something about his presence felt wrong. When I was done, I quickly washed my hands, trying to push away the lingering anxiety. I opened the door, stepping back into the dimly lit hallway. And that's when I saw him again. The man was no longer facing the corner. He had turned around and was now looking directly at me. His eyes, they weren't normal. There was something empty about them, as if they had no life behind them. Just hollow, dark sockets staring into me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The kind of stare that felt as though he could see right through me, into my soul. I don't know why, but I felt like I couldn't look away. I wanted to run, but my feet felt frozen in place. My mind screamed at me to get out, to turn around and leave as quickly as possible, but I stayed rooted there, just staring back at him. Then, without a word, he slowly tilted his head, and a chill ran down my spine. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This wasn't normal. He wasn't normal. There was something unsettling, almost supernatural about his presence. His gaze didn't waver, as if he was waiting for me to make a move. I broke eye contact and turned to leave, the fear coursing through me. My legs felt shaky as I hurried back toward my car, not daring to glance back. The parking lot was just as empty as when I'd arrived, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I got into my car, started the engine, and quickly drove away. But that sense of dread, it didn't leave. I drove for miles, the night air growing colder, my headlights cutting through the darkness. But even with the road stretching out before me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. My heart thumped in my chest, my eyes flicking nervously to the rearview mirror every few seconds. I came across another rest area a few miles down the road, hoping to stop and clear my head. Maybe it was just the stress of the road. Maybe I was imagining things. But when I pulled into the parking lot, my heart sank. There, standing in the corner of the lot, was the same man. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring at my car. The same stillness, the same unnerving presence. But this time, there was no mistaking it. He was following me. I wasn't imagining things. I slammed the car into reverse, my mind racing. I drove past the man, my eyes wide with fear, not daring to stop. I didn't care if I was breaking speed limits, I just had to get away. I don't know how far I drove before I finally stopped at another rest area, but it was enough distance that I thought I might be safe. When I stepped out of the car this time, I looked around cautiously. The parking lot was completely empty. No one was around. The man was gone. But that didn't make me feel any better. In fact, the emptiness only heightened my fear. Where had he gone? How had he vanished so quickly? Had he been real? Was I losing my mind? Or was something far worse at play? Every time I look back at those moments, I feel as though I've never fully escaped. The memory of those hollow eyes haunts me. The way he stood there waiting, still as a statue, like he knew something I didn't. And that feeling that I was being followed, that he was out there somewhere, watching. It never truly left me. So if you're ever driving down a long, lonely highway and you see an empty rest area, I beg you, don't stop. Don't let the stillness fool you. You might think you're alone, but sometimes in places like that, the darkness hides something much worse. And if you do stop and you see someone standing in the corner, staring at you with those hollow eyes, just keep driving. Because I can promise you one thing, whatever it is, it won't let you go that easily. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC The Place of the Brave and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us.